It was a journey no one expected. Famine in Judah had brought them together in Moab, and now nothing could tear them apart. For Naomi, the return to Bethlehem was a bitter one. Behind her lay her husband and 2 sons, buried in foreign soil. For Ruth, a new land, a new people, a redeemer, an extraordinary journey of unyielding devotion. A love story for the ages. Ruth, your people shall be my people.
Shalom and welcome to our show. I'm Miles Weiss. This is my co-host and my wife, Catherine.
We have another wonderful show, Miles. I'm so excited to get started today.
Yeah, we're in the book of Ruth. Your people shall be my people. And we've been seeing the tension grow. We've been seeing this incredible story of loss, love, and legacy as Ruth and Naomi have traveled from Moab to Bethlehem. They've come to meet Boaz, the kinsman redeemer. But now there's this drama of whether he is in fact the kinsman redeemer who can take Ruth and Naomi to himself and provide for them for the years to come. And the drama has gotten more tense because there's another kinsman who is contending for Ruth in this. We don't know how it's going to turn out. So really, we're seeing the drama unfold in a fresh and lively way, and the Bible's really coming alive now in the story of romance and redemption. So let's get to it right now.
כן, אני הוא גואלך, אבל יש גואל קרוב ממני. אולי הוא ירצה לגאול אותך. אם הוא לא ירצה, אני אגאל אותך. מבטיח לאחי אדוני. תישארי איתי כאן הלילה. תישארי כאן עד הבוקר.
And Ruth lay at his feet until morning, arising early, lest she be recognized.
אל תספר כך לאיש. בואי, תני לי את הצעיף שלך.
And Boaz measured out 6 measures of grain and gave it unto Ruth, telling her to bring it home to Naomi. It was more than a kind gesture. It was proof that Boaz was concerned about Naomi's welfare and that he cared deeply for Ruth.
The drama is unfolding between Boaz and Ruth, and it's about to take an interesting turn. You know, the mutual honor that's shown here is really quite amazing. There's Ruth in her boldness coming into a threshing floor of men, an unheard of idea in the time, in the culture of the day. And Boaz, his ability to cover her, and not only to cover her, to extend his skirt over her, which has such spiritual meaning, but then to tell her, Eshet Chayil At, in the Hebrew, you are a virtuous woman. And not only so, but he says that My daughter, fear not. I will do to you all that you ask, for the whole city of my people knows that you are a worthy woman. What a great testimony for Ruth, that Boaz is confident that the way she's carried herself, her treatment of Naomi, her manner is so amazing. He said to her, I've seen that you haven't gone after the young men, whether they're rich or poor. You've saved yourself, you've kept yourself. He's telling her about her virtue, and he's reminding her that the whole city knows that. It's a really wonderful covering that he's extending over her. And, some people speculate that Proverbs 31 may be related to the book of Ruth. For instance, every Friday night at Shabbat, we sing to one another. The husband sings to the wife sings to the husband, and we bless each other. I suggest you try this at home. Don't wait for Friday, you can do it any day. But we sing over one another blessing. And the husband's blessing over the wife is from Proverbs 31. And he asks the question very similar to this phrase in Ruth. He asks, Eshet Chayil Mimtza, a virtuous woman who can find. Boaz calls Ruth a virtuous woman. We ask on Friday night, where can one find a virtuous woman? And we tell our wife all that Proverbs 31 says about her. It's a wonderful time. And then the wife, in turn, reads Psalm 1 over the husband, or speaks a psalm like that to him, sings to him, and lets him know that he's blessed if he walks in the counsel of the godly, and if he walks after the Lord and stays close to the Lord, fuels his passion for the Lord. There's a mutual blessing. They bless one another. They bless the children. And anyone who comes into that circle gets the overflow of that blessing. It's a wonderful time. And we sort of see the roots of that here in the story of Ruth, don't we? Where Ruth is being called one who is a virtuous woman. And Boaz is saying that she's known in the city by her testimony, by her reputation. But there's about to be a very interesting turn, and the drama is going to get thicker, because Boaz lets her know that there is another Goel, there is another kinsman, another relative who is nearer, who is closer than Boaz, and actually has the first right to redeem Ruth and Naomi. Now, if this was a Hollywood drama, he would be the sort of a villainous character and Boaz the hero, perhaps. But he has the right to redeem Ruth, and Boaz knows that. According to the laws of the Torah, he knows that this other man has the first right to the redemption. So he lets Ruth know that this is a very serious thing, because they are obviously being very closely drawn to one another. And it's getting to be an intimate and a loving, romantic, beautiful unfolding. And yet here's the high point in the drama, in a sense, that this other kinsman could come in first and say, no, I want Ruth. And it would take away the entire story. It would change everything. You know, remember that the kinsman, the Goel, he had to be a relative. He had to be willing to perform. He had to be able to perform the redemption, and he had to be willing to assume all the obligations that come with redeeming the relative, redeeming Ruth in this case. And so Boaz lets Ruth know that he is disturbed in his spirit, you could say. He is concerned that this other Goel may come in and take her away from him. And we're drawn in the story of Ruth, because we're rooting for Boaz and Ruth to come together. And we're going to see how God orchestrates this.
For insightful perspectives of Israel and Bible prophecy, ask for our free monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter. When you call, be sure to ask for our free catalog with the latest videos, books, and music. Our correspondence course, the Institute for Jewish Christian Studies, includes reading packets, teaching CDs, and mail-in tests. You may want to join us on an upcoming tour of Israel or Petra, or cruise the Mediterranean visiting Greece and Ephesus. Please contact us for more information.
אני רוצה לשמוע הכל. ספרי מה קרה.
תראי, 6 מידות שעורים. הוא אמר, קחי את זה לנעמי.
לאט לאט ילדתי. בואי נראה מה יקרה עכשיו. האמיני לי, אני מכירה את בועז. הוא לא ינוח עד שתיפטר שאלת הגואל.
plot thickens. Ruth and Naomi get back together, and Naomi's so curious to find out what has transpired between Ruth and Boaz. She asks her, and Ruth said, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, for he said to me, 'Do not go empty to your mother-in-law.' Then said she, Naomi, 'Sit still, my daughter, until you know how the matter will fall, for the man will not rest until he settles the matter this day.'" In the Hebrew, it says, "Lo yishkot ha'ish ki im kila hadavar hayom." The man will not rest till he settles the matter this day. These are significant statements from Boaz to Ruth to Naomi, and especially for Naomi's ears, she's hearing something that you and I might not pick up right away. Do you remember way back in chapter 1, verse 21, Naomi, when she's asking to be called bitter because she feels that the Lord has dealt harshly with her, or her life has come to such a bitter place, she says, "Call me Mara, bitter," instead of Naomi, pleasant. And yet here we see God overturning that testimony through Ruth, taking Boaz, using Boaz to overturn the testimony of empty and full and reversing it. Whereas Naomi felt that she was gone, she had come back empty into the land. Now Ruth is going to come full from Boaz. And what a beautiful picture that is of our encounters with Yeshua and how he fills us. He fills our life with meaning, with purpose, with even destiny. I want to encourage you today to ask him to fill you to fullness. And that's what happens to Ruth. And it's a wonderful story. It's a wonderful time in their encounter between Ruth and Naomi. They're back together. This reversal has taken place. And there's a secret code here for Naomi. I believe that every Hebrew number has a meaning. None of them are without meaning. And the number 6 speaks of the fullness of creation before rest comes on the 7th day. It really speaks about the 6 days of creation. It's also the number of man. But Naomi, in her hearing, she ties this to the giving of 6 measures of barley. It wasn't 5, it wasn't 7, it was 6 measures of barley. And the signal to Naomi is this man is going to have his creation. He's going to see the fullness of creation come, and then he will rest. In other words, Boaz is signaling her, I won't rest until I have the redemption that I believe God has put before me. In other words, I am to be the kinsman redeemer. And it's a picture of the fullness of redemption. You know, it's like the seamless robe of Yeshua. It's like the way that the robe was placed over Ruth. It reminds me of the seamless robe of Yeshua. That even when he was on the cross, when the soldiers were gambling over the robe, they would not tear it apart. They would not take it to pieces because it had such authority in their minds. It was connected to one of godly authority, and they knew that. They knew he was innocent. They knew he was godly, and they knew he was sent from God. And so they gambled over the robe symbolizing that skirt, that hem, the fullness of his garment that could be extended to you and to me. And not only so, that robe was never torn, and yet at the cross, the very veil in the temple was torn, symbolizing and signaling the end of the priesthood of man and the beginning of the fullness of the priesthood of Yeshua HaMashiach, our high priest. That veil being rent was a signal, just as the signal from Boaz to Naomi through Ruth was that fullness had come, redemption was coming. Well, so it was at the cross. For you and for me, when that blood was shed, when that fullness came, the veil in the temple was rent, and the priesthood of Yeshua was instituted forever in eternity.
When we're there in the land of Zion, next year in Jerusalem, L'Shana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem, oh Lord, we'll be with you and no more tears. Oh Lord, thy kingdom come, thy will be done next year. L'Shana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem, L'Shana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem.
I love that footage of Israel. It reminds me of home. I just always want to go there. There's nothing like a trip to Israel. With me is our travel manager, Tracy. Tell us about our trips. What makes them different from others?
I think a couple things. One thing is we have a staff of people. I'm thinking about our upcoming tour. We're actually going to have 6 staff people on each bus.
Wow.
A bus seats 53 people. We have 2 tour pastors, 2 passenger liaisons, a guide. We have people back at the hotel that work full-time around the clock. Plus, I am full-time in the office at Zola Tours, wanting to talk to you. You can call me. I'm really like each person's personal travel liaison.
That's awesome.
I handle all the details. And also, we have the experience behind us. We've been going to Israel for 28 years. We've never canceled one tour. And I have made registration easier than ever. People can go to our website. I invite you to do that. Go to Levitt, Levitt.com. You will find out our upcoming tour dates. Through the next couple years, you'll have our full itinerary on there. You'll even have the ability to register online. Everything is right there at their fingertips. We want to make it easy as just a snap of their fingers, because the people that come on our tours have been loyal viewers. They are people that have watched our show. They've been saving their whole life for this trip, and we want to make it special.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much, Tracy.
Thank you, Miles.
A great way to stay in touch with us is through the monthly newsletter, the Levitt Letter. It's full of up-to-the-minute information about Israel, great articles, great teaching. You want to ask us for that, it's free to you. Also, this week, our offer is Ruth, Your People Shall Be My People, the very series that we're showing right now. Let's get back to the story as we find out whether Boaz actually has a legal right to bring Ruth to himself.
So Boaz went to the gate of the city, a common meeting place for those living in Bethlehem. And there he met the other kinsman redeemer, the one that Boaz had spoken of to Ruth. Boaz was committed to resolving the question as to who rightly should acquire Elimelech's land, and, more importantly, who should become Ruth's kinsman. In his heart, he cared for Ruth, but according to the custom of the day, he could not pursue her as he was not the closest living relative of Elimelech. His heart's desire could wither away here at the city gate. An important meeting such as this deserved a proper hearing by Bethlehem's most respected elders. None of them knew it, but they were about to witness a decision which would affect the future of all Israel. Boaz's good standing in the community couldn't help him here, nor could his wealth. It was all in the hands of the Lord.
נעמי, שחזרה מארץ מואב, רוצה למכור את חלקת האדמה של אלימלך, אחינו. אני מציע שתקנה אותה. גאל אותה למען עניי הזקנים, היום. אתה הגואל הראשון, אני אחריך אני.
אלימלך היה תמיד איש טוב. אדמתו הייתה עשירה ופוריה, כן. אני אגאל אותה.
In the ancient world, the gates of the city was the place where justice would be administered. The elders of the city, men of note, men who were prominent in the city, wealthy, and men of character, would gather and dispense justice for the whole town or the whole area. No doubt Boaz was one of those men. He was a wealthy landowner, he was a man of stature and known character, and so we see him gathering elders in the gates of the city in order to have this witness for the adjudication of the situation with Ruth and the near kinsman. There's a nearer kinsman, and Boaz is going to be very, very fair and very, very honest in giving the opportunity to him first before Boaz gets the opportunity to be the redeemer. You know, the number 10 is significant. There are 10 commandments. 10 is the number of testing. 10 men make up a minyan or a prayer group for the Jewish people. When Rebekah was going to meet her Isaac in the fields of the Lord, it was on 10 camels she went. And that number is used over and over again to speak of testing, to speak of testimony, of witness. Ruth and Naomi were in Moab for 10 years. And so we see this scene unfolding in the gates of the city.
And here we have Boaz and his character displayed. His eye had clearly been on Ruth, and his heart had been for her. Her eyes had been on the Lord, which had brought her to a place of having her eye on him too. But he knew he needed to come about it according to the Torah. He knew that there was a next in line, and he needed to bring it before the elders of the gates to make sure that he had done it according to the scripture. So he brings this matter and he brings it before the man, and he says, are you willing to buy back all of the land of Naomi and to buy also Ruth, a Moabitess? He puts the cards on the table that the woman that he'd be paying for and the land that he'd be acquiring would come with a Moabite wife. You see, Boaz in his lineage, he is connected. We can know in Matthew, he's connected to also a Gentile. His mother is Rahab. It's quite funny, you know, how God is interweaving these Jews and Gentiles in his holy plan.
Yeah, it's speaking on a personal note of Jews and Gentiles. Back when I was falling in love with you, there were other suitors in line. There were other gentlemen in line who were actually trying to wed you, marry you, and I had to really give it to God. And I think Boaz is really picturing for us as believers. We understand that he's a type of Messiah, but he's also showing us the way that we need to, when we know what we want, we still need to lay it before the Lord and say, God, your way, not mine. If it be your will, if it's something that you want from me, so be it. And if not, I know you have something better for me or something different for me, and I trust you. And I think it really pictures for us the sacrifice of Yeshua at the cross. He came from heaven. He had everything to lose, everything to give up, and yet Philippians tells us that he made himself of no reputation and went to death, not only death, but the death of the cross, the most horrible death conceivable, so that you and I could have choice, so that you and I could choose to love him, serve him, and be with him, both abundant life here and in eternity forever. It's an amazing picture of what God has for us if we will trust in Yeshua HaMashiach.
Great music from Sasha and Anya. You may wonder what home life was like at the time of Ruth and Naomi. Here's Arie.
How beautiful it is to sit around a table in a walled city, in a stone house, where you have the pita bread, you have the olive trees in front of you. We are now in a typical house of Beit Lechem. Beit Lechem, the center of food. In Hebrew, lechem is bread. In Arabic, lachem is meat. In other words, this is a center market where people could come and find food. Living inside a home like this, look, the walls made of stones. This is limestone. This is the main rock here on the mountains. It's roofed with logs and some plastering on the walls to protect from the sun, from the rain. When you're tired and you want to sleep on the ground, just you put a mat on the ground and you sleep. Look, you don't lose place for beds. What a difference of living here in home like this and being outside in the fields Let's remember, Ruth, she was outside on the fields of Bethlehem. It's called Ephrata. But at the same time, Naomi was in a house like this, in a home, all day thinking about Ruth. And then in the evening time, Ruth left the fields and she brought some of the gleanings material with her to the room. And what a joyful meeting it was around the bed, when Naomi could take the grains and make out of this flour and then bake pita bread for both of them.
At this point, it appears that Boaz is being challenged by another kinsman, Miles.
I know, and what's amazing is that they're doing this according to the Torah. They're really trying to honor God in the way they do this. Boaz and the other kinsmen, they're working it out. The challenge has come. We really don't know where it's going.
Right.
And one of my favorite parts here is that we've seen now that not only are we seeing Boaz as the type of Messiah, type of Jesus, but really now we're seeing Ruth as the bride arising, and the character of the bride is starting to come forward. You know, he calls her a virtuous woman in these scenes, and we understand that it's very possible that the writer of Proverbs was actually referring to Ruth when Proverbs 31 was written. You know, we say that every Shabbat, we speak it over the bride, and I think it's very possible that that was the person on whom it was based. So, the drama will continue. We'll meet next week to see more of this. Until that time, we want to say to you, Sha'alu, Shalom Yerushalayim.
Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Our offer on this program, the DVD, Ruth, Your People Shall Be My People. Shot on location in Israel, Miles and Catherine provide some wonderful insights regarding one of the Bible's all-time heroines. Ruth forsakes her own land and people in Moab and joins her Jewish mother-in-law on an extraordinary journey that brings hope and redemption to all. A love story for the ages. 8 programs on 2 DVDs. Call 1-800-WONDERS and ask for the DVD, Ruth, Your People Shall Be My People. Also, please call toll-free or write to receive our monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter. It's absolutely free and contains insightful article and news commentary with a refreshing perspective you won't get from the mainstream media. The Levitt Letter is also available at levitt.com, along with current and archive TV programs, our national airing schedule, and much more. Please remember, Zola Levitt Ministries depends on tax-deductible donations from viewers like you. This has been a paid program brought to you by Zola Levitt Ministries.